Good evening. Today we have 3 stories for you. First we will learn about a man who didn't know we all eventually die, and I guess his plans got screwed up. Then we will meet the ant, with a century-old secret and her great love for serpents. Finally, we will learn about a woman, with no passion left in her marriage, but then all of a sudden, she meets Julia, a bubbly, athletic and full of life woman. What could ever go wrong? So without further ado, here we go. I honestly didn't know that humans and everything eventually dies, and I am 50 years old. Throughout my life, I had gone without seeing any kind of death, and nor did anyone tell me. I was told that we lived forever growing up, and I had believed that ever since. I literally thought that we were immortal, and to this day it is by some major coincidence that I had never heard, seen or known about death. I loved life, and because I thought I had forever, I made plans about what I was going to do in 100 years, 500 years and even 1,000 years. I had such grand plans, and I was so full of life, and I couldn't believe that we eventually die, and an initial existential crisis set in straight away. I had 50 years just working constantly to save up, so I could do the fun stuff at 100 years old, 500 years old and even 1,000 years old. I feel so angry and cheated, and the friendships and experiences I had thrown away is making me feel stupid and desperate. I have no idea what to do now, and I have spent my youth just working, and the idea of death is just terrifying to me, as I have just heard of it. Because I had no concept of death, I am feeling terrified at the times I had pushed people off cliffs, secretly put poison in food as a joke, set fire to places with people in them, and shot people from afar, because I had no idea that people died. The amount of people I had killed is now creeping up on me, and I hate it now that I found out that we humans, and everything in general, dies after some time. I found out when I was staying at a hotel and overhearing a conversation between 2 receptionists. One receptionist had said, "I'm not working at this hotel any longer, it will be the death of me. I won't be young forever and you can die at any moment, and so I'm going traveling to the other concierge." My mind was blown, and I went up to the receptionist and told them, "There is no such thing as death. We all live forever," and they laughed. In disbelief, they eventually realized that I didn't know that we all die. They showed me videos of people dying and rotting, and my whole worldview was destroyed. I then followed that receptionist home, and when I finally had him cornered, I stabbed him. I wanted to see if he was telling the truth, and to my dismay, he was. I watched him die and I couldn't believe it. My plans of what I wanted to do in 100 years, 500 years and 1,000 years, all gone, in an instant. My Aunt Val was always a little out there. She lived deep in the Ozarks, 40 miles from what you or I might call civilization, with only her snakes for company. Mom always insisted Aunt Val showed zero interest in any kind of reptile until her mid-30s, and that her sudden obsession was completely bizarre, but I always thought it was awesome my aunt was a serpent wrangler. So imagine my delight when she asked if I wanted to stay with her one summer and learn all about snakes. I packed my bags and hopped on the next bus. 3 hours later, Val greeted me at the station. It was an hour's drive along bumpy roads to her cabin. And every so often, from the corner of my eye, I saw a forked tongue dart in and out of her mouth. My imagination, surely. The first thing she did was take me into the reptile room, where 6 rows of glass tanks stretched from floor to ceiling. Inside there were pythons, cobras, and even a viper. Awesome. The next few weeks were a hard lesson in self-reliance. We caught our own dinner, made repairs around the cabin, and spent hours chopping firewood. And then, when the chores were finished, she'd teach me about snakes. The woman was a walking encyclopedia. She showed me how to drain their venom, ways to identify breeds, everything. But as time dragged on, she seemed somewhat drained. Her skin lost its elasticity, and she did the tongue thing more and more, It was like she'd spent so much time around snakes, their mannerisms rubbed off on her. Toward the end of my stay, as I cleaned out a tank in the back of the room, there was this loud hiss. Oh crap, I thought, one of the snakes got loose. I barreled down the aisle and spotted Aunt Val, but she looked different. Her skin was gray and peeling off in huge chunks, her hair mostly gone. She had to cling onto a tank just to hold herself upright. As I rushed over, she hissed again and opened her mouth, then it opened wider and wider. She tilted her head toward the ceiling. And then, from her gaping mouth, an intact skull popped out. The skull brought along a spinal column with several organs still attached, lungs, a beating heart, parts of a nervous system. As Aunt Val's outer husk fell away, the skeleton creature slid out of her skin and onto the floor. I retreated into the rear wall while Aunt Val slithered toward me in a lazy shape, organs trailing behind. I suddenly knew where Val's spontaneous fascination with snakes came from. This wasn't actually Aunt Val, this was a snake monster masquerading in her flesh. Perhaps it traded skins each time one became worn out? And then I had a sudden, terrifying thought. If the creature molted and swapped skins, that meant it didn't bring me here just to learn about snakes.
Somewhere along the way, my husband and I had lost our spark. We couldn't quite place why, and we didn't talk about it, we just idly watched it slip away. Like an out-of-control car heading to a lake, I watched my husband sink into depression. At first, I took initiative to try and make him feel better. I signed up for the gym and encouraged him to go with. I tried cooking his favorite meals to surprise him. I even tried to spice things up in the bedroom, but nothing seemed to work. Several times I asked him what the matter was, or if there was something I could do. Each time he shrugged and only offered the same words. I feel like my life doesn't fit me anymore. Over time, we talked less and less about it. Looking back, maybe things would have ended better if we tried. But in the back of my mind I felt the same, perhaps that's why I watched it burn out. I doubted myself at first, but that changed the day I met Julia. Julia was bubbly, athletic, full of life. I saw a beauty in her I had never seen in a woman before, and in time, it was all I could think about. It was innocent at first. A lunch date here. Running together after work. My husband seemed to notice my new enthusiasm, and it only seemed to drive him down more. As I spent more time with Julia, he got worse. Whereas I started running and feeling better, he stopped eating and talking almost altogether. He grew thinner as my infatuation with Julia grew, and before I knew it she took me on a date. My spark had returned, but for someone else. It was something I would have to come clean about soon. We met at a bar on the outskirts of town, a little place called the Sixth Shot. It was there my husband and I had first met, a place we hadn't been since our rut had begun. Julia and I shared a table, and in time, we shared drinks and the feelings we felt for each other. Later that night, we shared a bed. I enjoyed it so much, we agreed to meet there again. I couldn't deny my guilt, but still I looked forward to it, more than anything I ever had before. It was a few days before we met again, and when I saw her, she was beaming. She was at the same table we had before, but sat oddly different. Her shoulders seemed more hunched, and it's like her makeup wasn't right. The closer I got, the more apparent the changes became. "I feel much better, thanks to you," she said, in a voice very unlike her own. The smile she gave was wrong, limp even. I looked past the stretched skin, to the undeniable eyes and grinning teeth of my husband. And I heard him add, "Now that I have a life that fits."